Hi everybody and welcome to the Flute Practice. Today we are finally tackling sight reading. It was one of your questions. One of you asked me, how can I improve my sight reading? How can I get better at this? So today we're going to tackle it and find out how. Let's go check it out. There are a couple of skills that you need to develop in order to really master sight reading. One of these skills is your ability to count, to stay in the right beat of the bar no matter what happens in between that time. And also just to have a basic and good grasp of certain rhythms and how they work. Now, a lot of this is going to come with time, with practice, as you improve your kind of concept of rhythms and how they work improves, but you need to understand that this is, in my opinion, one of the kind of foundation stones of sight reading. Rhythm is absolutely important. If you have got problems in this area, my recommendation is before you kind of tackle this huge problem of sight reading, go and work on your rhythms. Another important area that you need to have a very good grasp of are different key signatures and what keys have what sharps and flats and so on and so forth. And on top of that, to really have a very solid grasp of all your scales and arpeggios. At least the scales and arpeggios that you need for the kind of sight reading that you're doing. If you're a beginner, you're obviously not going to need all 12 keys yet. I think so many of us think that sight reading is this sort of magical ability and you either have a gift for it or you don't. I can say for somebody that has truly been bad at sight reading most of my life, really bad at it, and something that has improved a lot, that it is something you can get better at. And I think we need to understand what sight reading really is. A friend of mine actually kind of brought my attention to this, that sight reading for him was really about identifying patterns and having the connection of identifying a specific pattern and your fingers being able to play that pattern almost immediately and subconsciously, where you don't have to think about that pattern anymore. So for example, a very simple example of this, if you see in a piece of music, oh look, there's a G major scale. You don't even have to think about what those notes are. You know your G major scale and you can just play it. So I think we have to kind of separate sight reading into two big components. The one component of this is what we talked about a moment ago, which is kind of like training your tools, which includes obviously understanding all your rhythms, which includes your scales and arpeggios, and which includes finger patterns. Now on the flute, we have like many books of different technical exercises and finger patterns. In jazz and improv, they always talk about riffs, you practice your riffs. And I think that if you can kind of like practice these little combinations, these little finger combinations, when you see them in sight reading, you actually automatically can play them and you don't have to think about them so much. I pretty much practice through every single interval there is on the flute. I use this as a warm-up. I have a system of warm-ups where I really go through every single interval. I'm going to be making a video about this for my patrons. It's a really cool system, so for those of you who do want access to this, you can go check out my page. I want to talk a little bit about identifying contour as well. I find this such an important technique for knowing where I'm going. So I often am not really thinking like, okay, A, B, C, D, E. I'm really thinking of the steps. So I'm thinking, is it a line to a space, so one little step up? Am I jumping up the third? Am I jumping up a fourth, a fifth, and so on and so forth? So I'm rather thinking in like intervals and contours rather than thinking note for note. In other words, when I see that line going up, I know pretty much most of my fingers, except obviously C to D, but they're going to be lifting, they're going to be moving up as well. I have a pretty good grasp of seeing the shape of notes and where it's going, rather than really specifically reading every single note. Of course, I can read all the notes. I know what all the notes are. But I find in the moment, in the second, this is a much simpler process, much easier for me to kind of deal with as the notes are coming in. The next kind of other side of sight reading, I think, is taking all these tools that you've developed and now being able to identify them and play them very quickly. And this process takes a bit of practice, takes a lot of practice. And what really you're doing is you are always trying to read just a little bit ahead, that you know what's coming. When you've identified something in your brain, so say you're starting the piece, first bar, you've identified, okay, there's my G major scale. Already you're looking to the next bar and identifying what's coming next. So that you're always just a little bit ahead, identifying and then playing. The playing part should become almost absolutely automatic, and that is why I say those tools that you're developing, those need to be there. They need to be developed first, or at the same time. What you will find is in time, as these tools develop and develop and develop, you better, concept of rhythms, better concept of key signatures and scales, arpeggios, technical exercises, your sight reading kind of automatically goes with it. That being said, it needs to be practiced. So my absolute favorite method of practicing sight reading, I did it. It really improved my sight reading. I do it with some of my students, most of my students, especially the high level students. I have seen students' sight reading ability just go exponentially up, is to do your good old studies. Now I've got one of my study books here. This is 125 easy classical studies. I'm going to be putting a link below so you can go buy the book if you like. There are tons of other books. I also have a lot of free material on my website. You can go check it out. I'll put that link below as well. And I've got a couple of other books down there as well, which I think, are also really great books to buy. Now, why I like this book, I'm just going to show you this for a moment, is that it really starts so simple. It starts off really easy, just kind of crotchets, minims, and semibreves, or what do you got? Quarter notes, half notes, eighth notes. We don't use those things in South Africa, so excuse my translation here. All right, and I'm going to just page through. Eventually, you're getting quite difficult. You're getting quite complex. So it moves fairly quickly. But I think especially for those of you who are getting into sight reading, who are developing your skills with sight reading, I would recommend do a study a week. First day, you just play through that study. Just, really sight reading through that study. And then through the process of the week, you work on it, you work on it. And then next week, you do the next study. Last week, we did a little video on improvisation. And this is one of the many benefits, in my opinion, of improvisation. I think very often we kind of have to just learn to let go when we're sight reading. And we have to realize that the rhythm is more important than the notes. If you can stay in time and in rhythm, and play kind of anything in between, you're doing pretty good already. And I have pretty good reasons for this. I think that when we are playing with other people especially, we have to stay in time. The notes become less important and just staying on that beat in that moment. I say it's a bit like a ticking clock. Time just keeps moving on and you cannot go back and fix things and change things and try and correct things. And in improvisation, I think it's very much a similar kind of a concept, but from a very different angle. We have to stay in time. We got to keep moving. There's no going back and changing things and fixing things, but there's also no such thing really as a mistake per se. We kind of can work everything as we go around and just sort of work our way out of it. And so I think when we apply this kind of thinking to sight reading, when we realize the most important thing, don't stop, keep going and stay in time. And everything in between that, we can kind of improvise our way out if we need to in the moment. And I think we start to look at the notes on a page in a lot more kind of relaxed way. We don't get so tense and so frightened and so afraid that we have to play every single little note right now. And we rather just think, okay, I know what key I'm in, and I've got a basic idea of what's going on in terms of the rhythms or whatever. And actually from there, I can relax and know that I will work my way out of whatever little tricky corners I get stuck in, or if there's something that I really am not managing. If we can just stay in time, we actually will get through it surprisingly well. This is also why with your studies, I'm going to seriously recommend playing with a metronome, even putting on that first beat emphasis again, and just making sure that you are sticking in that beat, whatever you do, so that whatever happens in between that, it's fine. Last really fun improv tip, one of my favorites actually, go get yourself a friend, take out a whole bunch of duets or whatever it might be and just read through duets. I've done this with some colleagues of mine, with some friends of mine, and it is really one of the best ways. It, number one, puts you under that little bit of pressure that somebody else is watching or listening to you at least. Number two, you learn that you have to stay in time. You've got to keep it going. You can't stop and do your own thing in between. And it's just fun, guys. I mean, really, we are playing music to be able to play with other people and to make, beautiful music. So why not just get together and have some fun? That's it from me for now, guys. Have fun practicing this beautiful, awesome skill of sight reading. It's not as scary as you think. Give this video a like, comment below on your own experience of sight reading. I think we can all learn from each other, so leave that down in the comment section. Until then, happy practicing and see you next time.